A single white crystal lands on a piece of roasted meat. Almost without thinking, you scatter a few more. Not because someone taught you to, not because you stopped to consider what it is, simply because the food feels incomplete without it. That tiny movement lasts less than a second, yet hidden inside it is a story that began hundreds of thousands of years before the first city, before the first farm, before the first language was ever written down. Most people think salt became important because it made food taste better. That isn't what happened. For most of human history, salt wasn't a seasoning, it was a survival problem. Long before humans learned to build houses, forge metal, or grow crops, their bodies were already searching for something they couldn't see. A mineral so essential that every heartbeat, every thought, every movement depended on it. The strange part is that nature never made it easy to find, which raises a question. When did ancient humans first begin searching for salt intentionally? The answer reaches back into a world that looked nothing like our own. Long before Homo sapiens appeared, the ancestors of mammals carried a biological inheritance that has never disappeared. Every nerve impulse traveling through your body depends on sodium. Every muscle contraction, every heartbeat. Without sodium, the electrical signals that allow your brain to communicate with the rest of your body begin to fail. Modern medicine understands this in extraordinary detail. Sodium regulates the movement of fluids between cells, stabilizes blood pressure, and allows neurons to generate the electrical impulses that make thought itself possible. Your body cannot manufacture it. It never could. That single limitation shaped millions of years of evolution. Because evolution is remarkably simple. If something keeps you alive but cannot be produced inside your own body, evolution creates a powerful desire to find it. Hunger exists because of calories. Thirst exists because of water. And somewhere deep inside your nervous system lives another ancient instruction. Find sodium. The remarkable thing is that this instruction is older than humanity itself. It was already waiting for us. Imagine East Africa, roughly 200,000 years ago. The afternoon heat hangs above the grasslands. A small hunting party moves carefully across the landscape. Their feet disturb almost no sound. Hours earlier, they tracked a wounded antelope into a dry valley. Now they finally reach it. The animal lies motionless beneath scattered acacia trees. Most people imagine the hunt ending here. In reality, this is where survival truly begins. Before anyone thinks about carrying meat back to camp, someone kneels beside the animal. A stone blade opens the body. Warm blood runs into the soil. The liver is removed first, not because it tastes better, because instinct says it matters. Children watch closely. Older hunters eat immediately. There are no recipes, no cooking pots, no understanding of minerals or biology. Only generations of experience silently teaching one lesson. Some parts of an animal keep you alive better than others. Thousands of generations repeated this behavior long before anyone understood why. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherers have noticed something curious. Groups living entirely from wild foods rarely develop severe sodium deficiency, despite having no access to table salt. At first, this seemed almost impossible. Where was the sodium coming from? The answer wasn't hidden inside salt. It was hidden inside life itself. Fresh blood, organs, muscle tissue, natural drinking water, wild plants growing in mineral-rich soils. Unlike modern processed food, wild ecosystems recycle sodium continuously through animals, plants, rivers, and soil. Nothing is isolated. Everything returns to everything else. For hunter-gatherers, survival depended less on finding salt itself than on remaining connected to ecosystems that quietly supplied it. But ecosystems are unpredictable, and sometimes they fail. Archaeologists have found evidence that prehistoric humans repeatedly returned to particular landscapes for reasons that had little to do with hunting alone. Certain valleys, certain springs, certain exposed rock formations, again and again. For decades, researchers debated why. Food alone couldn't explain the pattern, neither could water. Something else was drawing people back. Many now believe mineral-rich environments were among those invisible attractions. Natural salt springs leaked dissolved minerals from deep underground. Seasonal pools evaporated under intense sunlight, leaving thin mineral crusts behind. Clay deposits carried traces of sodium and other essential nutrients. Nobody left written records explaining these journeys. The evidence survives only as repeated footprints across the landscape, patterns without words, choices remembered only by archaeology. The next clue comes from an unlikely teacher, Animals. Across every continent, wild herbivores travel extraordinary distances searching for mineral deposits. Elephants abandon familiar routes to reach hidden caves where salty rock can be scraped from stone walls. Mountain goats lick exposed cliffs. Deer return to the same mineral springs year after year. Even gorillas have been observed eating mineral-rich soils to supplement their diets. These behaviors puzzled scientists until biology offered a simple explanation. The animals weren't searching for unusual flavors. Their bodies were responding to the same neurological signal yours does every time salty food suddenly tastes irresistible. Nature had already solved the problem. Someone simply had to notice. Ancient humans were extraordinary observers. Their survival depended on paying attention to details other animals ignored. A broken branch, fresh tracks, bird calls, changing winds. They watched predators, they watched prey, and perhaps most importantly, they watched where the animals kept returning. Imagine following a herd of antelope through unfamiliar country. For days they move without hesitation. Then suddenly they stop. Not because of food, not because of danger. One by one they begin licking damp earth beside a rocky hillside. The ground itself has become valuable. A curious human approaches after the herd leaves. The soil tastes strange, sharp, bitter, unlike anything else. Days later, they remember how different their body felt afterward. They return. Then they bring others. No one calls it sodium. No one understands chemistry. Yet knowledge has begun to spread, not through language alone, through memory, through survival, through generations quietly repeating what worked. Anthropologists often describe early humans as masters of social learning. Unlike most animals, humans rarely had to rediscover everything for themselves. One successful discovery became everyone else's inheritance. A useful plant, a better spear, a safer cave, a hidden spring. Knowledge moved faster than genes ever could. That ability may have changed humanity more than intelligence itself. Because once one group discovered where minerals could reliably be found, the discovery no longer belonged to one person. It belonged to culture. And culture remembers things that individuals cannot. For tens of thousands of years, humans probably followed this rhythm. Find the places where nature concentrated salt, return when needed, share the knowledge, move on. It was enough. Until the world changed, because the greatest transformation in humanity's relationship with salt did not begin with salt at all. It began with a seed planted in the ground. It began with a field. At first, nothing seemed extraordinary. A family scattered seeds into the soil. Months later, they harvested more food than they could possibly eat in a single day. For the first time, people no longer had to chase every meal across the landscape. Most history books describe this as humanity's greatest breakthrough. In many ways, it was, but every solution creates a new problem. And agriculture quietly created one our ancestors never expected. For hundreds of thousands of years, wild animals had supplied nearly everything the human body required. Fresh meat, blood, organs, mineral-rich plants gathered from diverse environments. The menu changed constantly, but nature usually balanced itself. Farming changed that balance overnight. Instead of eating dozens of different wild species throughout the year, early communities increasingly depended on only a handful of crops: wheat, barley, rice, millet. They provided calories in astonishing quantities, but calories are not nutrition. Grains contain remarkably little sodium. The body that had evolved for hundreds of thousands of years suddenly found itself receiving enough energy to survive, but not enough of one mineral it still desperately needed. The craving never disappeared. If anything, it became louder. Researchers studying early agricultural societies have found evidence that the transition to farming often came with declining health. People became shorter. Dental disease increased. Signs of nutritional stress became more common. Agriculture allowed civilizations to grow, but biologically, the first farmers often paid a price. Their bodies were adapting to a world evolution had never prepared them for. And somewhere within that transformation, salt stopped being helpful. It became essential. Across different continents, something remarkable happened. Communities separated by thousands of kilometers with no contact whatsoever began solving the same problem in almost exactly the same way. Not because they copied each other, because biology had given them the same question. And eventually, they discovered the same answer. Instead of searching for naturally occurring salt, they learned to make it. Near mineral springs, people collected salty water into clay vessels. They built fires beneath them. Hour after hour, the water slowly disappeared. When the last moisture finally evaporated, something remained. Tiny white crystals, not discovered by accident, manufactured. For the first time in history, humans were no longer waiting for nature to provide sodium. They had learned to extract it themselves. It was one of the earliest examples of humans reshaping the natural world to solve a biological problem. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient salt production sites dating back nearly 8,000 years. Broken pottery scattered across the ground tells an unexpected story. The vessels repeatedly cracked from intense heat. People simply made more, generation after generation, season after season. No monuments marked these places, no kings ruled them. Yet they may have been among the most valuable locations in the ancient world, because every pot represented something invisible. Security, a reliable source of survival. What began as simple experimentation slowly became specialized knowledge. Certain communities produced salt, others traveled to obtain it. For the first time, sodium itself began to move across the landscape, not inside animals, not inside plants, but carried deliberately by human hands. Trade changed everything. A hunter can only carry enough food for a few days. A farmer can store grain for months. But salt offered something neither could. It preserved food. Meat that would spoil in days could now last for weeks. Fish caught during one season could feed families during another. Entire communities became less vulnerable to famine. Salt was no longer simply keeping people alive directly. It was protecting future meals. Every handful increased certainty. Every journey carrying it connected distant populations. Roads formed, markets expanded, ideas traveled alongside minerals. Trade rarely transports only objects. It transports culture. As civilizations grew larger, rulers noticed something impossible to ignore. Every person needed salt. Unlike luxury goods, demand never disappeared. That made salt something even more powerful than gold. It became predictable, controllable, taxable. Ancient governments built systems around it. Empires protected mines with soldiers. Caravans crossed deserts, carrying enormous blocks of rock salt. Ports flourished where sea salt could be harvested. Some regions became wealthy simply because geology had placed salt beneath their feet. Control the salt, control preservation, control trade, control survival. History remembers wars fought over territory. Less often does it remember the quiet minerals hidden beneath that territory. Yet they shaped borders just as surely as armies did. Then, almost without anyone noticing, the struggle ended. Machines replaced fires. Industrial mining reached deposits our ancestors could never have imagined. Ships carried millions of tons across oceans. Factories refined it into perfect white crystals. Within only a few generations, one of humanity's rarest resources became one of its cheapest. The search that had lasted hundreds of thousands of years was suddenly over. The biology was not. Neuroscientists studying sodium appetite have discovered something fascinating. When your body lacks sodium, specialized neural circuits increase your motivation to seek it. The experience is not simply taste, it is reward, relief. Your brain releases powerful signals when sodium finally arrives because, throughout almost all of human history, finding it dramatically increased your chances of survival. The problem is that evolution works slowly. Civilization changes quickly. Your nervous system still behaves as though salt is difficult to obtain. But modern supermarkets solved that problem long before your biology realized it. Today, salt hides almost everywhere. Bread, cheese, sauces, processed meat. Foods that never even taste particularly salty often contain enormous amounts. The ancient search ended. The ancient instinct never received the message. We still experience cravings designed for a world that disappeared thousands of years ago. Our bodies are running prehistoric software inside an industrial civilization. Look at the salt on your table again. It seems ordinary, disposable, easy to ignore. But those small white crystals carry the memory of countless journeys, of hunters following animal tracks across forgotten valleys, of families gathering around boiling clay pots, of merchants crossing deserts, of civilizations rising around invisible minerals hidden beneath the earth. Every pinch contains the solution to a problem that haunted humanity for hundreds of thousands of years. Not because salt changed, because we did. Perhaps the strangest part of human history is that the things we stop noticing are often the things our ancestors would have treasured most. The greatest victories eventually become invisible, and maybe that is the final lesson hidden inside a grain of salt. The search shaped humanity. Only success made us forget there was ever a search at all. If you enjoyed exploring the hidden history behind ordinary things, subscribe. Every week we uncover another forgotten story buried beneath everyday life, revealing how ancient decisions still shape the world you wake up in today.